Good. All right, here we go. Well, good morning, everybody. Happy Saturday and welcome to Second Saturday Divorce Workshops. My name is Judd Allen. I'm going to be your host today, and I am partnered with Suzanne Söderberg out of Scottsdale, Arizona. And she is a CDLP, and she's been in the mortgage industry for a really long time. And we're going to talk a little bit about the real estate issues in divorce today, and namely, what the options are with the marital home. That tends to be usually one of the biggest assets to deal with. So, a little bit later on, Suzanne's going to drop her expertise through all the decades on what the options are in a divorce, on how to handle the marital home. A lot of things in there that I don't think most people are really aware of. So, but I'm going to go through a little bit of the overview of divorce first. We'll spend about 15 minutes or so just kind of going through the ins and outs. If you're attending this today, these divorce workshops are designed for anybody who is considering divorce, in the process of it, or maybe the decree has been signed and it's over with, and now we've got to, rebuild our lives. So whatever stage you're in, these workshops are definitely going to be for you. So that overview will give you a really good idea if you're in that kind of consideration stage of, maybe what to expect. So a little bit about me. I am a financial planner. First, I've been in wealth management now going on 22 years. With the investment consulting group. I also have J. Allen Financial, which does, most of the divorce financial planning on that side. And right now, currently in my candidacy for my CDFA, which is a certified divorce financial analyst. That kind of makes me official and allows me to do some things over and above what I can normally do now. So. And as I mentioned, Suzanne, I'm not going to steal your thunder. I'll let you go through your credential. When we hand things over, I'll let you toot your own horn there on your credentials. But we're really excited to have you today. That's for sure. I know you and I met, gosh, maybe 8 months ago. I think now, maybe even longer. I'm not quite sure, but very excited to finally get to this point and have you on today. So.
Me too.
Every month I do these webinars every single month on the second Saturday of the month, and we always bring in a professional from the legal, the financial, the emotional side of things of divorce. So we want to kind of tackle this thing at all angles. So. Who is Second Saturday? What is Second Saturday? And I am a Second Saturday leader in the Birmingham, Michigan area. So, Birmingham, Michigan, depending on where you're watching this from, Birmingham is, we say it's Detroit-ish. It's a suburb of Detroit, about 40 minutes north of Detroit, to give you kind of a frame of reference where in the state of Michigan, we always use our hands and we're down here somewhere. So, Second Saturday, however, is a nonprofit organization based out of San Francisco, California, and was started well over 30 years ago by two women in the financial services industry who kind of started to see this. The laws had changed. The divorce laws had changed decades ago, where most states were no fault, things like that. So there had been this increase in divorces all of a sudden when the laws changed. And these two women in the financial services industry out in San Francisco area, started to helping people go through divorce. They saw this influx of divorce cases kind of come through their office, and what they started to see was that there was always one spouse kind of clueless about the money side. Usually it was a single income household, or sometimes dual income household, and each spouse kind of did their own thing. But they saw the need to bring financial education to the divorcing crowd, especially those spouses who really didn't have too much involvement in the financial issues of the household. So So they started these seminars, second Saturday workshops 30 years ago. They haven't missed one. They do them on the second Saturday of every month as well, and now they're nationwide. So wherever you're watching from, chances are there could be a second Saturday, workshop or leader in your area. I am the only one in the Southeast Michigan area at this time, so we got a pretty wide range, wide range there. So. Um, but second Saturday's goal really is, changing what it means to divorce in America. And that's what I'm going to talk a little bit about. Divorce is a scary thing. I've been through one myself 10 years ago. And, I didn't, when I went through mine, even being in the profession, that I am, I didn't know about CDFAs and CDLPs and, all these other professionals that now, um, you know, can make the divorce much smoother, much more transparent, much more cost effective. I know the dollar signs start really start rolling in the heads of folks that are going through a divorce. So the goal of Second Saturday is really to change what it means to divorce in America. And what we're here to do is to empower you to make clear decisions when going through this. Suzanne's going to talk a little bit about it later on, but I know darn well, like, when it comes to the home and the assets, probably one of the most common things I hear is, wow, we just want to get it over with, and boy, oh boy, that can be some costly mistakes. So we want to empower people with the clarity. We want to empower them with information. We're not here to persuade anybody to do one thing or the other. It's just to bring a tremendous amount of value and sort of change what it means in America to divorce, just because I went through it and now I know what kind of value we can bring to the table. And, our goal is that when it's all said and done, that you're in a position where you can now start thriving. So it's a big deal. It's a big deal in life, and it can certainly take its toll on all parties. So tremendous amount of information on secondsaturday.com on my website. We're gonna have QR codes at the end here for all of our websites and everything that you can just snap a photo of. It'll link you right there, book meetings and things. But Second Saturday's website has a whole host of information on there, guides talking about alimony, child support, all that kind of stuff on there. So it's a really really great resource, and on there too, if you're tuning in from afar, you can search for perhaps a Second Saturday leader in your area on the website. So. Um, we're going to go a little bit through the overview of divorce here. And first, I want to talk a little bit about, the different ways to go about divorce. And divorce is different now than it was 10, 15 years ago, kind of with these different ways. But, usually the first thing that comes to mind is it's going to be this long heated battle in the courtroom in front of the judge and all that kind of stuff. And that's very few cases are really litigated in divorce. Maybe about 5% of divorce cases actually, make it to the courtroom. Those that are on their way to the courtroom, a lot of times they settle them right on the steps of the courthouse. So before they go in. But litigation is a very, very time consuming, very, very expensive way to go. And usually in a divorce, at that point, you're litigating over things like a china cabinet. You could have probably just went out and bought yourself or something like that after paying the attorney's court fees and all that jazz. Okay, then there's mediation. Now, mediation, I would say maybe the most common, nowadays where, mediation is really an uninterested third party negotiator. So it doesn't take place in a courthouse or anything like that, usually attorney's office or something where both parties are there represented by their respective attorneys, and we have a mediator kind of going back and forth between the couple with their attorneys present, presenting, or their CDFA or CDLP present, negotiating the different settlements and things like that. So that's another way, pretty common way. The collaborative legal process is basically where you have a collaborative effort going on and you have attorneys, you have the other professionals in there, a mediator, maybe a therapist or whatever. In this collaborative legal process allows everybody to kind of stay in their lane and work on the settlement together. This cannot go to court. Collaborative process, the minute somebody starts threatening to go to court or what have you, the collaborative process completely is null and void and totally breaks down. So it is a much more effective, cleaner, transparent, cost-effective way. Sometimes I guess depending on your situation, but um, it does fall apart if, one party or the other, both parties start, threatening each other with going to court and things like that. So, and then lastly, there is, you can do it online. You can probably use Chat GPT. You can, get the help of a paralegal, do it yourself. What we call pro se, but, doing it yourself, we've seen it happen. Usually on the settlement side of things, it's kind of like if we could get along so well and come up with a fair and equitable settlement, why are we getting divorced in the first place? So a do-it-yourself can be, it kind of touch and go. Don't see a tremendous amount of that. Usually there's some legal representation somewhere, somewhere along the line. So. Now, if there's children involved, there are gonna be some child custody issues and support. Okay, these are really two different things. The custody, there's legal custody and there's physical custody. Legal custody is the legal custodian. Physical custody usually is going to be how much time the child spends with the custodial parent, and that's usually your parenting schedule, 50-50, 60-40, 70-30, whatever you come up with. So, but yeah, that's how those schedules really are determined who's the legal and the physical custody. Now, every state has child support guidelines, and those guidelines are going to determine, when the child support ends, how much it's going to be, et cetera, what expenses are not covered by child support. And this is a really big one that I get into when I do my webinar on the financial piece is the expenses not covered by child support. I've got three boys. They're all athletes, and child support is child support, but there are so many more expenses over and above that, that need to be really determined in there when we're talking about the kids, especially, when they're minors and they get to be driven around and all that sort of stuff. So, whoops, went backwards there. Sorry about that. Hit my wrong. Alimony. There is more information on the Second Saturday site too about the support issues and how it's determined and things like that. Okay. Now there's alimony, and alimony is typically what we call spousal support. And that is going to be determined by the lifestyles of each individual, the ability to pay, things like that. Other things that go into consideration are for the spouse, what is the potential for them to go out and earn a better living. Maybe there was a decision to stay home and take care of the kids and things after graduating with college degrees. Is that earning potential there? It's things like that will go into account in terms of how alimony is going to be determined, how long it lasts. Alimony today and how it's taxed, I mean, that's not really an issue. Usually pre-19 divorces, it was deductible for the pay or the spouse receiving it. It was deductible for the person paying it. So, but tax laws have changed that now. So, but there's also temporary support too. So, maybe the couple is separated while the divorce proceedings are going on. Temporary support can be determined as well, just to kind of keep everything going and things like that. Most times it's needed. So. Okay, a little bit about property division, okay? And this is where Suzanne's going to really shine her expertise here in a little bit. This is where I come in as the financial professional because this is where all there's a lot of tiny moving parts when it comes to dividing the property and things like that. So what's determined marital property, what's determined separate property, depending on what state you're in, it's how that is going to be determined is going to be impactful as well. But marital property basically in fair equitable states like we are here in Michigan, marital property is going to be anything that's going on during the marriage. That separate property might be anything that's brought into the marriage beforehand. Okay, so anything that appreciates or joint accounts, things like that. Okay, real estate's going to be marital property 9 times out of 10. Retirement accounts is another big one, and that's where I bring my expertise in. Most of the individuals that we work with, I'm in the Detroit area, again, Birmingham. So I've got the big three. I've got GM, I got Ford, I got Chrysler, and everybody else in between. And that's primarily who I work with are the engineers. So I fully understand the schedules, the workloads, the travel, and especially the retirement plans, the 401ks, the defined benefit plan, the pension plans, and all that sort of stuff. But these are all things that have to come into account, and understanding, the taxation and how things work on those really is going to be, is really going to determine your outcome, as far as the property division. Any businesses, they're again, do you keep the business? Do you sell the business? Do husband and wife continue to work in the business? Those kinds of situations, we got to bring in a professional business appraiser in order to find the value of those things too. But those are going to be considered marital property. Personal property, how that's handled, and how debt is handled. Okay, debt is another one that a lot of times can be very confusing in the sense that if there's joint debt, it doesn't matter what the decree says, who's going to pay it. It is still the obligation of both people. So if the decree says that John's going to pay it and he doesn't pay it, that debt is still, that obligation is still on both parties for joint debt like that. So those are the things that really tune into my webinar. I go through a lot of those in great detail, on all the retirement accounts and things like that. So, all right. Dealing with the family home. Suzanne's going to get into this here. She's going to talk about things like capital gains and what do we do with this thing and can you really afford to keep the home and some things to consider if you're going to keep the home. Things like that. I'm not going to go too much go too much into that right now. And then I lastly want to finish up talking a little bit more about my bread and butter, and that is like the retirement plans and retirement income and especially if we have any engineers on here, there's a pension there that needs to be dealt with. There's 401ks that need to be dealt with. There's restricted stock units that need to be dealt with, all that kind of stuff. So, but Social Security is one, and in order to qualify for Social Security benefits in a divorce, usually Social Security is not a marital asset. They don't really look at it. I've heard rumblings that, some divorces that, judges will look at Social Security as kind of a future income stream or something, but it's not really considered a marital asset that needs to be divided. Really, the rules are there if you've been married for 10 years, at least 10 years, and when you become eligible to collect Social Security, you're entitled to your ex-spouse's benefits about half. But you're only going to be able to collect from one source, and that's going to be the highest source. So if you have your own source of Social Security income at $1,000 a month and half of your ex-spouse's, if you qualify as 500, you're going to collect $1,000. So that's how the Social Security works. Retirement plans, big one. Pension plans, 401k plans. These aren't just a call the plan administrator, tell them you got divorced and slice it and dice it. That's not how this is done. These are going to require quadros, a qualified domestic relations order. And what that is, it's an official document that we send out to the plan administrator describing how the plan is going to be, the plan is going to be split up. IRA accounts. outside of a company plan usually don't require quadros. 401k plans, pension plans, absolutely. There's really important things that I talk about again in mine about taxation on that kind of stuff, and how those should be split up and transferred to avoid taxes and penalty. And if you need to, a lot of times people got to take a withdrawal from those assets, when they transfer. So there's some real key things that you need to be aware of on those, to avoid paying a lot of taxes and a lot of penalty and things like that come into play in the division of assets. How all this money is going to be divided. So, but quadros, that's how you deal with the retirement plans. Quadros should be sent out, pretty much kind of first thing. So that way, if they come back rejected or need to be revised or what have you, you've got some time there. So. Okay. Well, that was a pretty quick 20-minute 20-minute flyover of the divorce process, and I'm going to hand things over to Suzanne. And again, if you're going through this and you're here and like on the tip of the iceberg here, just stay with us. We just want to say things will get better, and we're gonna Suzanne's going to give you some great information here, regarding the real estate piece, which I'm sure it's on everybody's mind. So, without further ado, Suzanne, I'm going to hand things over to you, and I should be have the ability to share. I guess I'll stop share if you can, bring it up. I'm not sure. I'm not sure how we set that up this morning, but
Yep.
yeah, or I can flip the slides for you. No, nothing real formal here. So take it away without further ado.
Very good. Yeah, I'll have to see how I can switch the go forward on the slides. But yes, thanks for having me. It's so great to be here to share some information with everybody. I know divorce is such a difficult time that you go through. And I've been in the mortgage industry for over 28 years, and I've been a certified divorce lending professional since 2016. So just really want to help, people that are going through that time to understand their options that they have. I do what's called mortgage capacity mapping, and I have a divorce mortgage planning report that lays out everything that you can do. It shows you, refinance opportunities, purchase opportunities, whatever, and we just go over all the options and to choose the solution that is best for you. So that's just a little bit about me. So let's see, how do I?
Do I go here? I can switch them for you if you
There you
want.
go. I'll let you know. Teamwork,
I
teamwork.
got you. Yep.
So basically, for the marital home, there's generally three options. One is that the house is sold. So there's a new home purchase. You would take the proceeds from that, which would allow you to put a down payment on a new home, or if you decide to rent or what have you. But and that's decided how the equity is split, if it's 50-50, 60-40, what have you. And then you would need to, obviously, you'd want to get a pre-approval for your new home. The another one is that one of the spouses keeps the home, and a lot of times you're going to be doing an equity buyout. And so that's where the spouse A remains in the home, and then they would have to give the departing spouse their portion of the equity of the home. And that's done with, we get an equity buyout pre-approval. It's not technically a loan. It's just a transfer of the equity from one spouse to another, but it is categorized as a refinance. And things would have to be definitely spelled out specifically in the housing area of the settlement statement. And then another one could be the spouses agree, because there might be a lot of times, I'm dealing with it right now, there's such low rates on the first. So they're going to want to, leave the current loan in place and then defer the sale or refinance it later on and leave the existing mortgage in place. There's certain things that you have to do with that to protect yourself. Notifying the existing mortgage lender of the ownership changes. That comes under the Garn-St. Germain Depository Act of 1982, which would allow for the lender will not be able to call the loan due and payable for you. It lets the mortgage stay in place. but it doesn't remove the X from the mortgage. Only that refinance will take the one of the spouses on the mortgage off. That's the only way to get the other spouse off of the mortgage is to do the refinance. But if they're both on, then they're both still liable for, the mortgage. So
Hmm. Okay.
that's that one. Next. So details, selling the home, like I said, they need to be clearly spelled out in the divorce agreement. We want to spell out specifically who's going to be paying the principal, interest, taxes, insurance, who's going to be paying the maintenance, and everything on and the utilities on that. The parties would have to agree, and there's like language that you'd want to put in there, like parties agree that the marital residence at X shall be listed for sale and sold. Property must be listed within X amount of days, continually until sold. Other things that you want to address: division of the net proceeds, like we talked about before. Is it going to
Yep.
be a 50-50 split? How are you going to choose the realtor? I'm dealing with one right now. It's like, well, my soon-to-be ex-wife has a realtor friend, so I don't feel good about that. So do you have someone? So is it going to be designated by, the court or something where they have a specialized person that deals with that? There's certified divorce real estate experts out there that can help you with that. Um, Obviously, the cooperation of both parties. I've seen it before where one blocks the showings. They don't want to show the house. And so they're going to cause problems with letting potential buyers into the home. And then what's going to count as an acceptable offer? Maybe one really doesn't want to sell the house. So they're going to be like, well, I don't, agree with that. So that's that one for selling the home. And then the next one was like I was talking about for the equity buyout, where one spouse will keep the home. So there's going to be determining the current value of the home. So there's two kind of ways to do that. Well, there's a divorce appraisal that's out there. It's formal, it's defensible. The valuation is done by a licensed appraiser. There's a BPO, broker price opinion, or a CMA, which is a more current, more, oh my gosh, it's escaping me, analysis of the home. It's done by a realtor. It's basically informal pricing estimate, and it's used basically to set a listing price on there. And a lot of times, if you look at the tax value on there, those are undervalued on there. So it depends on what you're trying to do on which way to get an appraisal. So also I like to let people know for getting an appraisal, if you get an appraisal and then you have to do the equity buyout or what have you, they will not be able to use whatever appraisal you get. The lender has to have a lender-owned appraisal. So you will have to pay for another one when you go forward with a mortgage for whatever you're doing. So I like,
Interesting. Do you see that a lot kind of happen? Like an appraisal is done, and then when the divorce happens, it's like, sorry,
yeah,
that one doesn't count. Yeah,
yep,
yeah,
yeah. I just
that's
had
really
one,
important. Yeah, that's really important. Yeah,
yeah. I
good
just had
point.
one that he had two of them done, and I was like, oh my gosh. So
And
I
they're
just,
$500 for an appraisal. I don't know. They're
yeah,
pretty
that's the
expensive.
standard.
Yeah,
About
yeah, yeah,
$500 is what I
yeah.
usually quote. So
Sure, sure. So if I understand what you're describing here is really determining the value one of two ways or both ways. Number one, getting the appraisal, or number two, doing the kind of the broker's appraisal, right?
yeah,
Okay.
comparative market analysis. That was what
Comparative
I was,
market analysis. That's a fancy term. CMA. All
right.
right.
Exactly.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. Okay.
So, and then, like we said, reviewing the other assets, generating the income,
Hmm.
and I know Judd deals with that with, with your, the quadros or whatever, because maybe instead of having to add in the buyout into the mortgage, maybe you can offset that equity with another asset that you have, if it's a 401k or giving the quadro funds, or if it's what have you. So there are other ways to equalize the departing spouse, if you may. So
Sure.
and then
And with interest rates now, like doing a home equity line, a home equity line's an option too, is it not, to buy out the other spouse
Yep,
ish?
you
Yeah,
can do that. The only thing I let people know is that the spouse is going, if you don't do anything with that mortgage and you are both on the mortgage together,
yeah,
then they are both, you're both still going to be on that um, first mortgage. So you
gotcha.
can do the home equity, but I mean the home equity line, but they're still going to remain on that primary mortgage until you
Sure,
do the refi to get them off.
gotcha.
Um, and like I said, with the equity buyout things, I like to help people understand is, like I said, they're done as a refinance. A lot of people think that your equity buyout, that you're buying the home. You can't buy something that you already own.
Mhm.
Um, the title vesting is going to determine the type of refinance that can be, whether it's going to be a rate term refinance or a cash out refinance. So, how long have you both been on the title? How long have you both been on the mortgage? Things like that. The equity buyout must be addressed independently and separately from all other marital asset divisions. There can be no cash back, not even a penny for
Hmm,
attorney fees, for paying off debts, or anything like that. It has to be exactly
interesting.
the equity buyout, and that is all that you can do in that equity buyout.
Hmm,
And like I said, with the titling, the borrowing spouse, you both have to have been on it for at least 12 months to do it as a
okay,
rate term refinance.
okay,
Having the language very concise in the settlement agreement. Um, and then you have to set a realistic time frame. I'll get into a couple things with income to have it be done, taking into consideration qualifying income and things like that.
sure,
And then
sure.
one of the last things is dealing with the existing tax liability. Things are often overlooked because usually taxes are paid in arrears. So we
Mhm.
want to address that escrow account that's in there so that that money is there for you if you are keeping the home to pay that tax debt that's on there.
Yeah,
So
great
that's
point.
equity buyout's a pretty involved thing.
Yeah, it is. Yeah,
And then as we talked about the deferring the sale until a later date, um, that you might want to, the rate might be, fantastic or right now, but it needs to be spelled out clearly. Like I said, if it's, and then if it's not paid in a timely manner, you're both on there, you're both going to get affected on your credit. So you got to, trust the other person or have it, spelled out, like we said, on who's paying what clearly. Like I
sure,
said, taxes, insurance, maintenance of the property, and everything to make sure that that's being taken care of.
sure.
Um, then it says consideration is given how impact for capital gains, like Judd was talking about. It can, and there's the it says if you both meet the residency requirement where you've lived there 2 out of the last 5 years as your primary residence, and you're both on the mortgage, you can each claim to up to that 250 of capital gains exclusion, as long as
Correct,
you both own the house together. So
correct.
just like to always bring in that capital gains part. So
And that's the key piece there too, is that you have to live there 2 out of the last 5 years. A lot of investment properties and things like that where they're not, doesn't qualify for that. So yeah,
right. Yep.
yep, yep. Good
All
point.
right. Next one on that for the financial considerations. Um, like we said, buyout to one spouse, transfer of title isn't taxable. There's certain rules. If it's done within 1 year of the divorce decree going into effect, that should not be taxable. If
Mm,
that equity is paid between years 1 and 6, it's not taxable, but only if it is specifically written in the decree. And then if it is 6 years plus, it
mhm.
does become taxable.
Yes.
So you have to have that timing down if you are going to be keeping the home and
Mm,
dealing with the payout later. That's something that's going to have to be addressed.
sure.
Um, and then, as you can see there, we just talked about the 250 capital gains. I just mentioned that. I always get ahead of myself with the 2 of the last 5 years. And then, can you really afford to keep the home? That's one thing I go over in my divorce mortgage planning report. It has a feasibility and sustainability portion in it. You're going to be going from married to either single or head of household. That's going to change your tax bracket. So the effect, the after tax cost funds of effect is going to take place. So you might have a higher, payment, maybe, but at the end of the year, the effect on your taxes might be not as bad as you think. So we kind of look at that. And then what I said before is equalize the other party with other assets, like with, Judd doing a quadro or anything like that. So if you don't have to, or you might not be able to afford to add in the, the, add in, what was I going to say, add in the, oh gosh, I apologize. That thought went right out of my head.
Without going through the whole refinance process and all
Yeah.
that sort of stuff, yeah, you can basically trade that equity with an asset of equal value, is what you're saying, correct? Like
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
there's $500,000 in equity in the home and it's each person gets 250, we could do a quadro or something like that and exchange 250,000 from a pension plan or from a 401k
Yeah.
in lieu of the equity. So yeah, and I think like where rates are right now, a lot of that stuff, you get pretty creative in that sense because if you own the home a while, it's a luxury to own homes now with mortgage rates at 2, 3,
Yeah.
and they're still printing 7% paper. So
Exactly.
yeah, so
Yeah.
so me a
Yeah.
lot of times those quadros, and that's kind of the point I just wanted to bring up. I talked a little bit about like a collaborative divorce type thing. You work with different professionals in the room. You got a Suzanne, you got a Judd, you've got, the Ninettes of the world, and she's our local, she's another connection of mine for the divorce therapy and things. So yeah,
Right.
those are really, really, really good points that you bring up.
Yeah. And then I also like to mention about qualifying income because a lot of people
Mhm.
say, "Oh, I'm going to have a huge, I'm going to get 250 from a quadro." It's like, well, great. You've got a lot of, you have a big asset, but that doesn't translate into income per se.
Right,
So,
right.
you have what we call, employment income, part-time
Hmm.
income, full-time income, self-employed income. A lot of times one of the spouses may have been a stay-at-home mom, stay-at-home dad. They don't have any income out there, so
Sure.
we're gonna have to deal with that. A lot of times for self-employed and part-time, we need 2 years of history to have that income.
Hmm.
Support income can be income, but we call it the 636 rule. You have to have been receiving that spousal support for at least 6 months, and it has to be in place for a minimum of 36 months beyond the time of the closing of the loan to be considered income. So you might say, well, I have it. Well, we can't use it until later. So that's when Judd had said there's temporary orders that can be put in place that can actually help you get that clock started on that 6 month requirement of receipt. And then, like
I
we
forgot
said,
about that piece. Yeah, I
yeah,
forgot about that piece on the mortgage side. Yeah, you need to have a long history of the alimony support. Yeah, for sure.
right.
Great
So,
point.
yep. So the big why, like you said, you just gotta, why are you doing it? I mean, I'm dealing with one right now that she wants to remain in the home for the kids. And we
Hmm.
just have to find out if for the home stability for them, can she afford to do that? Are you
Hmm.
doing it for the memories? You have the status because, you have the home instead of, renting or what have you. And just be sure to evaluate, the numbers and the payment so you're comfortable with everything since you're going to be down to one income. It's going to be a different way of living. So just really know, what your big why is, which is what they're saying here in Second Saturdays to really consider that. So
Yep.
that then we talk about the can you afford to keep the home? Like I said before, we look at credit, and right there is, what's in a FICO score, has all those different things of, amounts owed, the payment history, what types of credit do you have, et cetera, et cetera. You're going to be going down to, one income, what's the stability of that? Um, and and then a lot of times people are like, oh, I pulled from Credit Karma, I pulled from, or my Chase Bank told me I'm this. That's a consumer report that you are looking at. When a lender pulls, it's a different algorithm behind the scene. lot of times they're going to pull about 20 to 40 points lower than what you actually see on those consumer reports. They pull a
Interesting.
FICO 9. I know that there's talk right now that they're going into, I can't remember the name of it, but they're going into a different credit scoring. But right now, like I said, when you just keep in mind when you pull your credit, that it can be very different with, when a lender pulls it.
Yeah.
So, and then also just realize that, like Judd said before, if you're receiving spousal support or child support, ultimately it's going to go away. Are you going to be, comfortable with it down the line?
Hmm.
So you just got to make sure that's going to be, and like, typically child support will be in place until the last child turns 18. So if your child is 15, you have to, the lender's gonna really know from the divorce decree and the child support section, when is that child going to be turning 18, and we might not be able to use any of that child's child support. So
Sure. Gotcha. And I'll just chime in on this real quick because you bring up a really good point on the credit reports. And I would just like to chime in and just say that this is a good idea now to like pull your credit, understand what's on there. Because a year from now, you might have to be doing a mortgage, you might have to be applying for credit. So get at the head of the game a little bit, understand where you're at, what your score is. Maybe there's things you need to clean up before the time comes where you have to, maybe apply for a mortgage, like what Suzanne's talking about, and have those expectations, where you may be. So great point.
thank you. Um, then can you afford to sell the house? Like we talked about before,
Mhm.
consider the market value. What we talked
Yep.
about with the broker price opinion and the comparative market analysis. And then from there, whatever that, and then when you get the actual appraisal, take away the mortgage balance, and then that equity is split however you decide to do that split. Um, then decide how equity may be divided, if it's adequate starting a new chapter. You're going to know that. Like I said, when I go through my DMPR report with you, or any other CDLP that you might work with out there, how is that going to be split? Will your portion be enough for a down payment if you're going to be doing a purchase of a new home at that point in time? And then, considering those tax consequences with the capital gains, and then are you going to be doing it, within years 1 to 6, after 6, or what have you? So you just want to take that and talk to your, CPA, and really know how that's going to impact you.
Great points.
Um, and like we said, calculating home equity and future value, calculating the home equity with current market value minus your mortgage balance, any other liens. Like Judd was saying, maybe some people already have a home equity line that's on there. So you have to subtract that, and then that's going to give you that equity that is going to be being split. Then ultimate evaluating the current market conditions. So you're in, like I said, you're always going to want to talk to a tax professional regarding potential future high, if you keep it, future higher capital gains when you sell. And then talk about your tax basis, or the carryover basis versus a step up basis, because divorce doesn't get a step up basis, but your tax person will be able to talk to you more about that. I don't give tax advice or legal advice or anything like that. So I always say, talk with them on that.
Yep.
Appraisal and inspection. So property title, like I said, we always look for who's on title. One of the things that Judd had mentioned before, I'm in a community property state, and somebody might have a separate property that was their home, and then they get married, combine the households. They're like, oh, I don't want my spouse to feel left out. So they put their, new spouse on title. That has now gone from separate property to marital property, because
Ooh.
they are now on there. So if you think that you're going to be able to, walk away with that, it's now community property in those community property states. And then looking up, having your realtor or whoever look up for any clouds on title for bankruptcies that have been filed, or outstanding liens that have put on title. I've seen those before. Maybe somebody has done a HELOC without the other person or what have you. Property condition. I know Judd's going to make some comments on that, but you want to know, go to house inspection. Who's going to know if there's deferred maintenance out there that you don't know, or you have known, but it hasn't been addressed, and now all of a sudden the divorce is in the picture. So you want to, get that looked at. WDI, wood destroying insect inspection, termites. Maybe they'll eat away part of your equity on that. Foundation inspection. There could be cracks in the foundation of the home that you don't know. And then have there been insurance claims that are out there? So like I said, if there's deferred maintenance, who's going to pay for that? Or is it all going to be put on you and you'll have to deal with that later on?
Yeah, I
I know
mean,
that you were going to say something.
yeah, that's something we really touch on in the financial planning aspect of keeping the house is all those little ancillary things, like, and I always encourage the inspection, figure out if the sump pump's going to last you, find out the holes in the roof, like all those little hidden things that can go on over time. Because later on down the road, big picture, you kind of play that tape towards the end, like now all this stuff goes wrong, and a lot of it isn't covered by homeowners insurance or anything like that. It's all out of pocket. So yeah,
Right.
yep, yep, it'd be expensive.
All right. um, Deeds and liens, that you can still be responsible for the mortgage even when you transfer. With a quit claim deed, a lot of people will do that. If you quit claim off the deed, you no longer have ownership, but you're still liable for the mortgage because you're on there.
Mhm.
And then problems can come into effect. I can't think of the name of the lawsuit that went on in Florida for somebody that quit claimed he was out of the home. So it means he's no longer covered for the insurance. A fire broke out, and then they denied the claim because they went after one, but the other one wasn't covered. So the insurance company actually won that one, and they did not get paid out. So you want to be careful of that with
Oh,
insurance as well.
wow.
Um, Deed transfer, things to look for. And like I've said, throughout, the only way to truly get your ex-spouse off of the mortgage is to do that refinance. And a lot of people are wanting to keep their interest rate. And so they're saying, well, I can just do an assumption. Conventional loans typically are not assumable. They have been getting done more because they are called incident to divorce, but it is still up to the lender and you will still have to qualify. FHA, VA, and USDA loans, the government side of loans, are
Mhm.
typically assumable, where you can keep the loan in place and then completely take over that. But you'd be able to see it on your closing disclosure. There's a box on, I think it's page 3. It says that this loan is not assumable or this loan is assumable. So you
Mhm.
can always look on there. Um, and then a lot of times with the assumptions, just be prepared. They can take upwards of 6 to 9 months to get those done. So
Wow.
it does come into play a lot. And that's kind of the overview of those.
Mhm.
And then choosing, like I talked about very early, choosing a qualified realtor. Have to be impartial. Like I said, that one, he did not feel like she was being impartial, so he reached out to me. I put him in touch with another CDRE, the Certified Divorce Real Estate Expert, so she was able to bring some clarity into there.
Mhm.
Um, and then the credentials and designations, CDRE, is what you would ultimately probably want on your side because they are very, very versed in the divorce aspect of things.
Sure.
And then just, have a total team for yourself. Like Judd was saying with the collaborative portion, you have all the people that are staying in their lanes with the attorneys and what have you. The only thing is with collaborative, if it breaks down, like you said, and it goes to litigation or whatever, all that team is disassembled. You can no longer use anyone that you have chosen in there. You have to choose whole new people. So
Yeah. Yeah.
just take care of that. The more knowledge, experienced mortgage person like me, certified divorce lending professional, I'm just not a lender that does divorce. I am very experienced in the divorce and how it impacts and all the intricacies of it in the divorce, in the mortgage process. And I know how to get those over those hurdles to get through underwriting because, as we always say, just because it's a legal option does not mean that it is a mortgage option for people. So you really have to know,
Yeah, good
have
point.
someone that's on your side for that.
Good point.
Um, and and like we said, the skilled contractors and for those inspections and things like that, they don't have any special designations, but you want to, like I said, make sure and take care of yourself and cover yourself for any home issues that you might have. So,
Yeah.
and that's kind of it. And if you have,
Awesome.
I had sent some um, handouts in, so if anybody wants any of those, they'll be available later on.
Great.
And there you have
Fantastic. Excellent, excellent. That was great. I mean, you touched on some things, Suzanne, that I, kind of forgot about a little bit, and some things that I even picked up and, learned today too. Especially with those, some of those intricacies and the financing options, like the box that you said on page 3. I know you've been doing this a long time when you can cite the mortgage application and tell you where exactly it is.
it,
Um,
right?
but yeah, wealth of knowledge on the marital home, because for sure this is most times the biggest sticking point, of
Yeah.
who's going to keep it and why and who can afford it and this, that, and the other thing. So, yeah, I appreciate you teaming up with me and bringing a bunch of clarity to that. That was fantastic. And the good news is for those that, registered and didn't get to see us, they're going to get a replay, so they're going to get to hear all that stuff, hear all
Okay,
that
good.
stuff too. Yeah. So, um, what I think we'll do, we're right at about the end here. We got about 10 minutes open. Andrea is on with us too. She's acting as our moderator. So what I thought, we'd stick around a little bit, and if there's any questions or anything, that Suzanne and I will stick around and answer any questions that you may have. I want to just go to the last right here. If you would like to get in touch with us, schedule a meeting, just have a conversation, whatever the case may be. There are some QR codes here on your screen. Just whip out your phone, hold up the camera, and that'll take you right to all our connections and calendar links and things like that. So, doesn't cost you anything to have a conversation. If you've got your own situation going on and need a little insight or what have you, then we're always here to support you. So these are the best ways to get in touch with us. So, Andrea, I'm gonna, I guess, open it up for Q&A. I'll mute my line, and we'll hang around here for a few more minutes.
Yeah, if anyone has any questions, feel free to pop it in the Q&A and I'll read them off for you.
And one thing I wanted to mention real quick too. I'm in Michigan. Suzanne is in Arizona. Both of our licenses and our scopes of business can, they go across state lines. So, usually it's just a matter of, registration or something like that, but nothing really limits us into bringing our services nationwide. Usually we have people from all over the country on the on the webinars on a Saturday morning. So, well, I think everybody dropped off. Most of the attendees dropped off here. So I think we're going to wrap it up. What do you think, Andrea? Do we have anybody else hanging around?
I think that just means we covered everything.
Okay. Yeah, exactly. We did a killer job. That's why. So, all right. Well, that wraps things up for the second Saturday for May. Join us next month, and on all of our socials, we've got the calendar there of who's coming up for the months. I believe I might be doing the next month. I don't know. Andrea handles the calendar, but always have great hosts on like Suzanne. And Suzanne, thank you so much. Thank you
Um,
so much for joining me this morning. It's we got rolling at 6:30 a.m. your time out there.
Thank
So
you for having me. It was
yeah,
awesome.
we appreciate it. Yeah, we appreciate it so much. We loved having you on. And yeah, that'll pretty much conclude today's webinar. And hope everybody has a great rest of their Saturday and weekend. And definitely happy Mother's Day to all the moms out there. It's you deserve it. So with that, everyone, thank you again for joining us, and we'll be talking soon. Bye for now.